and it just didn't work out. It fell through at the last minute. Hi, Rabbi.
Hello, everybody. How we doing?
Hi.
Hi, there's Tahel.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Tahel, I'm going to start to suspect you live in your car.
Yeah, a mom, I'm just a mom. My car is my office. My parents says, oh, you're in your office again.
So the truth is, the answer to my question is yes. Yes, you do live in your car. You have a house also, but you live in your car.
Yes.
Rabbi,
Yes.
so when is Yizkor?
Monday the davening will start at 10. We'll get to Yizkor at noon.
Good.
Right after the Torah reading.
Rabbi, I'm going to miss your all-night thing so much. What are you doing this year?
We are doing the 13 principles of faith.
Hi, Diane.
Hi.
Oh, you're home. Great.
Yeah, I'm home.
Yes.
I'm out of it,
So-
but I'm home.
Are you having each person like contribute, Rabbi, or you
Yep,
are?
Yep. Our 12th annual Midnight Torah Forum.
It was so great that year. I remember so well in your new house when we did before the synagogue was built.
Yep. In the living room.
Each one of us had a אחד מעשרת הדיברות.
Right. So it was that year. Everybody had to prepare on one of the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments. This year it is on the 13 principles of faith. Of the
Very
Rambam.
interesting.
Yep. Yes, we look
And
forward.
it's so amazing to like study all night long, and each person gives a different lecture. It's just so amazing. It's so amazing what people come up with.
Yeah, that's part of the point, though. The main impetus behind it was that Shavuot, more than any other holiday, we'll talk about a little bit about it today, makes the point that the Torah does not belong to the rabbis. Many people believe that their role to play in Judaism is to be spectators. This is actually, interestingly enough, this actually goes back to the way that you set up a synagogue. The Chassam Sofer, one of the great Torah scholars from Pressburg in Hungary, when the conservative, or not the conservative, the reform movement, the Enlightenment, wasn't yet coalesced into the various doctrines, but when the Enlightenment movement started and they started to rejigger Yiddishkeit, one of the things they did was reestablish the format of the layout of the synagogue. I don't mean the prayer service, I mean the actual setup of the synagogue. And the Chatam Sofer said in one of his writings that if you walk into a synagogue and you see it set up so that the bima is in the front and all the seats are behind it, you have to walk out. You're not allowed to stay in that synagogue. He says, because that's an indication that you're in a synagogue of the Enlightenment. And they did this to mimic the setup of the churches. And it's not so much the issue that they were mimicking the church, that was the problem, but rather what the implicit, or you can even say explicit, statement such a layout is making in terms of the congregants. What is your role in the synagogue? When you have the bima right in the middle of the crowd, you are making the point that the crowd is part of the service. Everybody is davening. Everybody is part of the service. The chazan is simply the coordinator of the prayers. It's the one making sure everybody's on the same page, moving along at the same pace, etc., etc. But the prayer is being done by the people in the community. It's a Beit Knesset. It's a place we all come together to pray. Moving the chazan's lectern and the bima and everything to the front of the shul is basically saying that the service is happening there in the front, and all of you are relegated to the status of observers. You are just, you are passive observers to the service that is happening in the front. You are not part of the service, but that you play a passive role in this.
Although I I have to, oh, that's right. I was going to say, in the Sephardic synagogues, you always see the bima like in the center.
Correct. And in most religious Ashkenazi shuls, in fact, it's a must. You must have a few rows of chairs that are in front of the bima. The bima has to be in the center of the shul for this reason. The chazan is still at the front, but that's because they need to lead the service. But they're not the only one davening. It's not happening in front, and everybody else are observers to it. And the same holds true of receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. The Torah was not received by the scholars and the saints and the righteous and the Talmidei Chachamim and the Tzaddikim. The Torah was received necessarily so by every last man, woman, and child. Everybody has to feel an equal ownership, an equal responsibility to study Torah, to perpetuate Torah, to execute on the playbook that is the Torah. And that is why, in terms of our learning, the all-night learning that we do, the all-night learning is traditional, is a universal tradition. I love that, whoever it is, Carrie, I love your title. Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Your name there is hello. You see, that way,
Right.
that way she can fulfill the Pirkei Avot's a mandate to be the one to greet. You have to
First one.
be the first one to greet.
But you also have to remember her name. Without her name at the bottom, I could not know anybody.
Right, but Carrie's just saying, "Who cares what my name is? I'm happy to see you." That's it. But either way, the point being that if you prepare for Shavuot, if you in the traditional format, the rabbi goes to the front and starts lecturing, then you're reinforcing the mistaken idea that the Torah is primarily the rabbis, and the rabbis allow the people in the community to have a kind of a secondary participation. Yeah, we'll pass on to you the information that you need to know. Versus what we do at the Chabad is that we have a Torah forum where the rabbi takes a back seat and volunteers from the community all prepare and present on whatever the topic is. And it really makes a point that everybody has ownership, needs to feel that ownership in the Torah. That's the best way to prepare for the next morning, in which we will all come back to synagogue and say Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, and we will study, and we will understand. So this is what we do yearly. I can't lay credit to originating the idea. The idea actually has a bittersweet origin. One Shavuot actually, there was a Chabad Shliach in Loudoun County, in Tyson's Corner, Virginia, who became ill with cancer. Young man in his mid 30s, and he was in the NIH. And so Shavuot, he was there. His brothers had come, all Chabad rabbis in their own right, many of them very, very successful, but had come to spend Shavuot with their brother who was in the NIH. And I, as the Chabad rabbi walking distance, also came to visit him. So we're sitting all there, we're all schmoozing, and obviously we start talking shop, as it were. So what do you do interesting on Shavuot at your Chabad in Toronto? This is Rabbi Nehemiah Deitch. To which he responds that the one interesting thing he does that's really a beautiful and a big hit is this idea of having everybody in the congregation, or not everybody, but volunteers. I'm like, I love that, and I borrowed it. Why do I say bittersweet? Unfortunately, this rabbi passed away, Rabbi Levi Deitch from Tyson's Corner, passed away not too long after that. But to a certain degree, part of this Midnight Torah Forum is a way, in a sense, we carry on his legacy. Because if it wouldn't have been for him, we would not have started it. So it's a beautiful thing.
That's a beautiful story.
Yeah. And so we're looking forward to doing it. But we're going to jump straight in. After 10 minutes of preamble, we're going to jump straight in. Only Chabad rabbi can do that, right?
There's always a segue, right?
Right. There's always, yes. Rabbi Yossi Jacobson, one of the Chabad rabbis who's known for being even more verbose than I am, coined the phrase. He says, before I speak, I'd like to say a few words. That was his line. So we've said a few words, now we can speak. All right. So Parashat Bamidbar and Shavuot, and you cannot divorce one from the other, because this Torah portion always falls regardless of whether it's a leap year or not, which is fascinating because we just came from the period of year, not a month and a half ago, we blew up the calendar by adding 4 extra weeks, right? That completely throws off the cycle. And we have already done the rehabilitative measures so that we're back in the regular order of business, because leap year or not, Parshat Bamidbar will always be the Shabbat before Shavuot. This Parsha. Leap year or not, adding 4 Torah portions or not, we will always be doing Parshat Bamidbar at this right before Shavuot. So obviously the theme of Parshat Bamidbar is in line with the theme of Shavuot. And the first and obvious point to make, or the connection to make, is the point I just finished saying, of the impetus and the motivation behind doing the Midnight Torah Forum format of having members of the community. This parsha opens up, and God spoke to Moses, Bamidbar Sinai, right? In the desert. Now, the fact is, we know that the Jewish people are in the desert. Every one of the commands that basically from the moment that they received the Torah all the way through the time they entered into the land of Israel, we know exactly where those commands were. They were given in the desert. And in the Sinai desert in specific, because that's where all the wanderings for the 40 years. Why do we have to single out and make this point? By the way, you know where this command happened? In the desert. Yes, Captain Obvious, thank you very much. The Jews didn't just end up in the Bahamas. We get that they're still traversing the desert. So why do we have to mention this? And the fact that we name not only the entire Torah portion, but the entire book on that word, Bamidbar, means that it's not insignificant that we've given this particular location. And the fact that this is the parsha before Shavuot makes the point that this message is also intrinsic into entering the theme of Shavuot. So what is Bamidbar? What is a Bamidbar? It is actually not, the word does not necessarily mean desert. You can have a midbar that is particularly fertile. It can still be called midbar. So what exactly does midbar mean? What is the specific connotation of midbar? Which is, by the way, the reason that if you look at many of the carefully worded chumashim in their translation, they will not use the word desert in translating the word Bamidbar.
What do they use?
Wilderness.
Oh.
Wilderness, not desert.
So this is coming out of a spiritual wilderness.
Good. That is a very important point you make. Yes, hold that thought, because I was going to go more basic than that. But you are actually, because Stuart is our resident chassid and Kabbalist, so he's gone.
In this group.
He's gone further.
He's in charge of the spooky stuff.
That's right. The stuff that Stuart loves. He loves the spooky stuff in Judaism. But what is if I asked you, what is the opposite of a wilderness?
Like a forest, lush.
That's the opposite? I think you're still thinking too much in the general realm of
Civilization.
civilization.
Yeah.
Civilization. So Civilization is the opposite of wilderness. And this is the question, actually, that's brought up in the Talmud about this Advent, this moment of the giving of the Torah. Why, in fact, did God choose to give the Torah in the wilderness rather than giving the Torah once they were in the land of Israel, in the capital city in Jerusalem, Mount Moriah, just as an example of a place where the Torah could have otherwise been given? Why in the middle of no man's land?
I have a guess.
Go ahead.
Because when you're in the wilderness, there's nothing else to distract you. This is it. This is new. This is totally new. The civilization, the existence of civilization implies that you already have a system going. And I'm going to give you a whole new system to live by. So you can't be distracted by anything.
Jerry, very good. Hold that thought. Also correct.
I got to hold that one, and then Stuart's got to hold his. And
exactly. We're getting to both of your points. Both of your
Who's supposed to remember the holds, you or us?
You have to figure our cumulative age and divide it by 5.
You should give them each a number so they'll know.
Exactly. Listen, you think we just saved the Midnight Torah Forum till, and communal participation till Saturday night? Oh no.
No.
This is we're already doing it right here. So you are both 100% correct, and both your points are about to be mentioned. But to start with the point, and the reason I want to start with this other point that I'm about to mention is because this is really on exactly what we just finished talking about. Jerry always said, "There's the segue. Here's the segue." A civilization also connotes jurisdiction. Jurisdiction means places that you can go, places that you can't go, private property, places that are reserved for certain circumstances and certain situations. You know what another word for no man's land is? Every man's land. The Torah was deliberately given not on private property, making the point that the Torah is available to anybody and everybody who would so choose to come near. So the first point is the Torah is all access. There is no exclusivity about the Torah. It's interesting. Not everybody can be a Kohen, right? There are 3 crowns. The Rambam, there's a daily study, a cycle of the daily study of Rambam on Maimonides' Mishnah Torah. We just completed it recently and started again. And the first few chapters are the big ideas of Judaism before it gets into the nitty-gritty of the laws of specific scenarios and situations. One of the big ideas that the Rambam opens up with is that there are 3 crowns that that Judaism recognizes. Keter Kahuna, Keter Malchut, the Keter Torah. The crown of the priesthood, the crown of the sovereignty, kingship, and the crown of Torah. The Rambam says one is not like the others. The crown of sovereignty is exclusive. You need to be in the dynastic line of King David. The crown of Kehuna, of priesthood, is also exclusive. You need to be in the dynastic line of Aaron, right? To be of the kin of Aaron, from the tribe of Levi. Keter Torah, there is no exclusivity. Any person has the right to become a Torah scholar if they so choose and commit to it. And that, by the way, is the answer to all those that push back on the idea that, oh, who are these rabbis that get to make all the rules that we all have to listen to? You know, the answer is, who are the rabbis? You're the rabbis. The rabbis are not some exclusive, shadowy cabal that operate in some back room, filled with smoke, cigar smoke and all the typical. Anybody can become a Torah scholar and commit themselves to the discipline of trying to elucidate and understand Torah to its truth. Anybody can join. And in terms of this crown being the one that is all access, is it, in fact, the lowest of all the crowns because it is the least exclusive of all of them? And the answer is no. The Keter Torah Ola Akulana. Of the three, the crown of Torah is greater than all the rest. In fact, it says, better a mamzer, who is a Talmud Chacham, a scholarly mamzer, than a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, who is an ignoramus. This is a quote in the Torah, or in the Talmud, basically. It says, Yafe mamzer Talmud Chacham mi Kohen Gadol am haaretz. There's actually a cute story that goes along with this. Obviously, not at the time of the Talmud, many 1,500 years later, in the Pale of Settlement, there was a great Torah scholar, and his name, he went by his, as oftentimes they did, by their great work, their magnum opus. There's the Chafetz Chaim. His name was not Chafetz, and his last name was not Chaim. His name was Yisrael Meir Kagan, but his magnum opus was the Chafetz Chaim, and so he was known as the Chafetz Chaim. Third Chabad Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, that wasn't his name, but that was the name of his great magnum opus. So there was another man, his name, a great Torah scholar, his name was Aryeh, and his great work was Shagat Aryeh. It's a response of halacha. Shagat Aryeh means the lion's roar. So you can already appreciate this man's sense of self-worth. Let's put it this way: he was an incredible Talmud Chacham. His interpersonal skills were not the greatest. He was particularly sharp. He suffered no fools. He had no patience. Therefore, he didn't become a great teacher. He just didn't have the patience. He couldn't handle.
I'm taking my class.
So, and so there are many colorful stories about this Shagas Aryeh, about this fellow and his general modus operandi. One such story is that he came into the Beit Medrash. He was going incognito, as oftentimes, especially because he wasn't being a teacher, Torah teacher. He was just a scholar writing books. He didn't have a need to keep a high profile. Everybody should know him, and because so he traveled in what was very common back then, was called the personal exile, incognito, traveling town to town without making a big deal out of himself. He had a personal sense of self-worth, but he didn't go around broadcasting. So he shows up in simple attire into the shul of a very prominent Torah scholar of his day, Reb Chaim HaKohen Rappaport. Chaim HaKohen Rappaport was a great Torah scholar, and Reb Chaim was in the middle of giving a shir in the Beit Medrash. Many people were sitting there listening to his shir, his lecture. And so the Shagas Aryeh is sitting there in the back. Sees the new fellow in unassuming attire, so nobody thinks anything of it. And the Shagas Aryeh is listening. And halfway through this deep and intricate lecture, the Shagas Aryeh starts making noises in the back, like, nah. And slowly everybody in the Beit Medrash starts becoming cognizant of this fellow in the back, this chutzpahnik, who dares kind of scoff at the lecture happening up in the front. So finally, one of the students, the disciples of the Rav Chaim HaKohen, it bothers him to the point where he whispers into his Rebbe's ear about the chutzpahnik in the back. So Rav Chaim kind of smiles, and he wants to assuage the chagrin of his students. So he quotes from the Talmud a statement that says, "Midachatziv kulei hai klal mamzer." Says somebody who could be this insolent is probably a mamzer. This is a quote from the Talmud. So he doesn't say the whole thing out, but he says just enough so the guy says, the fact that he is being this insolent, ... And the students understand what he's saying, and they laugh, and they think it's gone over the head of the simpleton in the back who's being chutzpahdik. At which point, the Shagas Aryeh stands up and he says, I hear you and your implicit accusation, and I will just respond that Yafa Mamzer Talmud Chacham me Kohen Gadol Am Haaretz. He says, basically, I see your quote from the Talmud accusing me of being a mamzer, and I will see that and raise you the other quote in the Talmud that says better to be a mamzer Talmud Chacham than a Kohen, Reb Chaim HaKohen, Rappaport, to be a Kohen Gadol who's an Am Haaretz, and who's an ignoramus. And he starts walking out, and Reb Chaim realizes he's not dealing with just anybody out there in the back, and they actually struck up a very strong friendship. But this is who the Shagas are using that quote, that we value a mamzer that's a Talmud Chacham even than a Kohen Gadol who is Am Haaretz. So the value of a Talmud Chacham, of prowess in Torah study, taking ownership of Torah study, is by far the greatest accolade. And that is the point of the fact that the Torah was given in the desert. Everybody should feel a sense of ownership and therefore responsibility to the Torah. Every last one of you can be a Talmud Chacham. It says that when somebody passes away, they will come up to heaven. And part of the judgment, that will be the judgment of one's personal life, whether they did right or wrong, is that they will bring this person a volume of incredible Torah elucidations, incredible ideas, new ideas of Torah thought, and they will bring this to you. And they say, take a peek, and you'll read through it. He said, "This is brilliant stuff. Who wrote this?" To which they will respond, "You should have.
Yeah. You should have.
This is the volume you should have written had you truly maximized your potential. This is the Torah that you could have brought to the world. This is the wisdom you could have brought to the world had you taken ownership of your Torah." Now,
That reminds me of you should have been more like Zushya.
right.
Maybe that's what that means.
Yes, a very similar point. It's entirely correct. The point being that we each should feel not just the feel-good message that the Torah belongs to everybody, but we should feel the weight of responsibility that God deliberately put the Torah in a place where everybody can access it, because everybody has the responsibility to access it. It is incumbent on all of us to feel the fact that the Torah is not just God's gift, but more importantly, it's God's investment. It's God's investment. He's counting on us, right? And I want to move, and this will be to both your points, Stuart and Jerry, as to why the Torah is given. By the way, I apologize, Paula and Les. Les, I apologize. I was remiss in not sending you an update, but Paula, I sent you a text. I guess you missed it. That we started early because we're going to be ending early. I have a doctor's appointment to finally, once and for all, take care of this hoarseness. And you will then all be able to hear my lovely singing voice. Right now, you're being deprived. You're being deprived.
May your doctor be good.
Yes, thank you. So
you want to be ready for Shavuot.
Right. Now, I don't think
But
it's going to be
we were just talking about how he's not going to be talking so much on Shavuot.
right. No, right. Correct. No, so it's not going to be. I'm going to most likely have to go on for a procedure.
What time did you start?
12:30, and we're going to end in about 10 minutes. So,
okay.
But we're going to try and pack a lot into these 10 minutes.
Have you said anything? Have you said anything meaningful in the last half an hour?
Not at all.
Thing.
Okay.
Not at all. I just, you know me, it's just all fluff. And,
Okay.
but either way, um, um, there's a very fascinating medrash, oftentimes quoted, especially by Chabad rabbis, because the Rebbe did an incredible expose on this medrash that is so delicious, if I may say so. You know, when something is intellectually delicious, it's just so unbelievably
You
well
should have
done.
told Les that you didn't say anything and he has to come Saturday night. to
That's
hear it.
right. Les, well, I'm gonna be reaching out to you. So not. I'll wait for the text message. But the 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 Medrash tells us that when Moshe came into heaven to receive the Torah, this caused a scandal in heaven. First of all, I mean, when all the angels in this pristine heaven turn around and there is a human being, the result of a drop of semen, standing there among them in pristine heaven, they just like, what is going on here? Well, who let you into the neighborhood, right? So they were already scandalized. Lamal yilud isha zu binina. What is this son of a woman doing among us? If they weren't scandalized by Moshe's very presence up in
Can
heaven,
you imagine the curse, a son of a woman?
son of a woman, right? To which God said even further, oh, he's here to take the Torah out of heaven. That pounding you hear is the collective jaws of every angel in heaven hitting the floor. They were shocked. What? This human being, this fallible, dirty human being, is going to take the most pristine, the crown jewel, and is going to remove it from heaven and bring it down into that cesspool under the jurisdiction of human beings, like us angels that can see from one end of the universe to the other and are entirely 100% holy and never had a foreign thought. We're going to have to go to hear the Torah's rulings by a whole bunch of dirty human beings. And they said, Chamut Genuza, God, your precious Torah that has preceded the world by 2,000 years, you're going to send it down to that place? Tena hotcha ala shamayim, leave your glory in heaven, they say. To which God turns to Moshe with a smile on his face and says, Moshe, I make a good point. Respond. This leads to a very fascinating back and forth, Talmudic back and forth between the angels and Moshe. They debate. They get into a debate and the debate is presided over by God, and it is quite fascinating. Each one invoking various rules and clauses and precedents to make the argument as the Torah should stay in heaven. The first argument that is being made by the angels is that God, this incredible resource, this incredible possession of yours that you are about to sell to the Jewish people. There's a rule that if you're about to sell any parcel of property, then who gets first dibs? Who do you have to give the right of first refusal to?
The person that's already living
The
there.
neighbor.
The neighbor, Dina de Bar Metzra. We are the neighbors of the Torah. We have first dibs. We demand first dibs. To which Moshe responds and says, it's called Matan Torah. It's called a gift. And a gift, if I want to give a gift to somebody, I don't have to first offer the gift to my neighbor, right? It's a gift. This is not a business transaction, right? And God could choose to give this matana, this matan Torah, this matana to anybody who chooses, he can give it to us. To which the angels respond and say, no, but it is also in the Torah, it says that whoever studies my Torah becomes my partner in this world. So we see there's an element of business transaction as well. So we once again invoke Dina de Bar Metzra from the business transaction. To which Moshe says, Yes, but you can't properly, truly, the Torah is not directed to you, doesn't address you. Let's look at the Ten Commandments. I am God, your God, who took you out of Egypt. The Mitzrayim Yeradatem. Did any of you ever go down to Egypt? Honor your father and mother. Last time I checked, you guys don't have a father or mother. 6 days a week you shall work, on the seventh you shall rest. Any manual labor going on in heaven here that I don't know of? Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery. I mean, none of this applies to you. This is not written for you. To which the angels responded, yes, in the most basic level, true, that we never went down to Egypt. But the idea of leaving your boundaries, that we can elucidate, we can study, and we will do so on a higher level of intellect than human beings can. We will be able to plumb the depths of Torah in a way that no human being ever can. So while it may be more addressed to you, you will never be able to understand it as deeply as we will. So the argument goes back and forth, until finally Moshe makes the point that wins the day. He turns to the angel and says, you're looking at the Torah all wrong. The Torah is not a prized possession. The Torah is not a prized possession that you put behind plate glass and make sure it stays in mint condition. The Torah is a tool. God made it as a tool of transformation. And if two people are coming and offering to purchase a piece of land, and one of them just wants to leave it in its pristine natural state, and one of them wants to build a homestead on it, then precedent goes to the one who wants to build the homestead, because you are going to be utilizing this resource to its fullest potential. The Torah is a tool. You in heaven, all you are offering the Torah is to maintain its pristineness. You are claiming that you're not going to let the Torah get dirty. And you're making an argument that we will make the Torah, have the Torah get dirty. And I am arguing, oh angels, that your argument is actually my argument. All you can promise the Torah is to maintain its status quo. But the Torah does not want to maintain its status quo. That's not the raison d'etre of the Torah. The Torah is a tool to transform the world, to take the desert, the wilderness, as Stuart said, and transform it into a garden, or transform it into a civilization. We promise to get the Torah dirty. Yes, that's exactly right. Every last one of us, not just the rabbis, not just the scholars, every last one of us, from the water carriers to the wood choppers, to our children, to our adults, hereby accept the responsibility that the tool that the Torah is places upon us, not just to study it, and not just to maintain its pristineness, and not just to lock it in the Beit Medrash, but to take it out into the wilderness and to use it. And we ourselves will get dirty, and the Torah will get dirty. And the Torah will change the world. And that is the raison d'etre of the Torah. It's the raison d'etre of the world. It's the raison d'etre of the Jewish people. It's the raison d'etre of creation. And so that is something you cannot promise the Torah, oh angels. You are status quo. You're static. Human beings are dynamic. It means we can fail. It means we can corrupt and we can destroy. But that same power that makes us susceptible to corruption and destruction also is the incredible power for refinement and for perfection and transformation. And that's what we bring to the table. At which point the angels don't concede. They jump on our side of the argument. They don't just concede the debate. They then escort Moshe with great fanfare and joy in a parade, bringing the Torah, each one of them holding, right, 2 crowns one for the word na'aseh, one for the word nishma, and they bestow this on the head of every single one of the Jewish people. And I'm going to make the point, ladies and gentlemen, that for the 3,334th time, we are not commemorating a historic event. We are re-upping to that commitment. God is going to be coming down once again to bring us, this generation in the year 2022, the Torah. He expects us to be there. He's going to be taking attendance. And I'm not saying this facetiously. That is our understanding. The Torah, we are not commemorating the 3,334th anniversary of an event. Rather, we are once again being there for the 3,334th time, that when God comes and hands to us, not to our ancestors, not to our scholars, not to our righteous, to us, to each and every one of us, the Torah. You better be there. This year it's very easy. It's Sunday. Be there in synagogue, in whichever shul it is. Be there to receive the Torah, to turn to God and say, I am present. I am here to accept my role, my responsibility, to be the transformative force that the Torah can be in this world. I'm going to receive the Torah, and then I am going to get it dirty alongside all the rest of us as we take it and make the world clean. All right, everybody?
Thank you,
Will,
Rabbi.
will there be ice cream?
Rabbi.
Oh, Les, is there going to be ice cream? Ha,
Yeah.
ha, is there going to be ice cream? There is not a dairy spread.
Rabbi, could you say why is the reason for the dairy products?
Yes, very quickly, because I do. So dairy products for a couple reasons. Number one, because when the Jewish people received the Torah, they received the mandate not just to eat any meat without going through the process of slaughtering. So they had the command, but they did not yet master the process. So they all went vegan or not vegan, at least vegetarian until, that's one answer. The other answer is because milk represents the nurturing original resource as you become. We're babes at that moment. The Torah was our mother's milk. And another halachic reason, the only reason quoted in halacha, by the way, which most people don't know, is that the offering brought in the temple on the day of Shavuot was the shtei halechem, the 2 loaves of bread. We commemorate this by having 2 meals on the holiday day. Now, the thing is, if I'm having my typical meal and then I break my typical meal of fish and meat, and then I break and then have it again, is that really 2 different meals, or is that one long meal with a break in the middle? How can I make it 2 distinct meals? By making one of them dairy and then making one of them meat. And the ramifications of that point is that you have to follow up your dairy meal with also the traditional fish and meat meal. You have to do that, halachically. So that's enough, but you have to eat again. It's very hard for us Jews to eat again.
It's tough. It's so tough. Yeah.
But to your point, Les, are we going to have my mother's birthday, Shavuot, and she, in her typical fashion, never made anything about herself. So she celebrated her birthday by putting out the most epic spread you've ever seen of blintzes, cheesecakes, lasagnas, and quiches. And my wife has continued without missing a beat. This is going to be the most epic dairy spread, at least across 3 time zones. I don't know about the West Coast.
But please remind
glad I
the family
came
to
home.
make my kugel, which was famous. I was called the Kugel Queen, and she has my recipe.
All right. All right. But really,
What time on Sunday?
Sunday, we are davening at 9. We get to the 10 Commandments at 10. So 10 at 10. So 9 o'clock we start, 10 o'clock, 10 Commandments. 11 o'clock will be the dairy spread. And in terms of ice cream for the kids, we are not just having ice cream, we're having the coolest, pun intended, ice cream party ever, because we're having this company called Sub-Zero come out and do nitrogen instant frozen ice cream.
Mm.
Really cool. And apparently, it's not just cool, it's actually apparently the most tasty because it's the creamiest. This flash freezing the cream apparently makes it all the more creamy. I don't know. To me, it's just cool and it's ice cream. So you had me at ice cream. But either way, definitely come out. We'll make it worth a while. spiritual.
Got a good answer, Tal?
Good
Oh,
luck.
yes, a great answer. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
All right,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Well,
Shabbat
good luck.
shalom.
Thank
Chag
you.
Sameach.
Luck on your procedure.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not having the procedure, I'm having the preliminary, but
Oh.
God willing.
On your
God willing, it should work.
diagnosis, say diagnosis.
On your
Yes.
Good luck on getting a good diagnosis and an easy treatment.
Thank you very much. Yes, amen.
Chag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom.
Chag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Okay.
Bye, Paula.
Thank you.
Chag
Bye,
Sameach.
Jerry.